Namaste all, and welcome to our continuing series on the life divine with our beloved Ranga. Today we are on page 520, and we are in memory, self-consciousness, and the ignorance. Beginning with the last para on 520, nevertheless.
Last time we have started a new chapter, memory, self-consciousness and the ignorance. So, if you remember, the whole problem started again, I'm revising. At one level you see the physical world as real. You raise your consciousness and you see the physical world is not real. So how is this coming? So let us examine our consciousness and find out the reason why this happens. So now he is examining consciousness. And this consciousness is not what we are. It's not a product of life. Normally people think that when something is living, there is consciousness beginning from there. It's not so. Consciousness is something fundamental like matter. It exists by itself. It is self-existent. It's not created by life. Normally you would think that. When the stone has no life, therefore there is no consciousness. But as soon as a worm or a caterpillar comes, consciousness is beginning. So the normal idea is that consciousness is a product of life. You can think of it that way. But Sri Aurobindo has categorically said no, it is something self-existent right from the highest level. Sat, Chit, Shakti, Ananda. These four things, substance, consciousness, power and Ananda, bliss, they are all one at the highest level, and when they come down, they change their status. They either reduce themselves or become more wide, it depends on the level you are in. So he wants to know why we see illusions, so he is examining consciousness. And he says that consciousness, let's start with memory. Memory, self-consciousness and the ignorance. We have read the first para and I am reading the last sentence of the previous para that we read. Okay. Memory is only one of the many powers and processes of the mind, which is at present the chief action of consciousness force in our dealings with self, world and nature. So, memory is only one of the many powers. What are the other powers? Mind has got the power of imagination. It's a very powerful thing. It has got the power of logic. It has got the power of self-introspection. So many different powers are there of the mind. So memory is only one of them, he says. So now, also in the first paragraph, he said that very often people think that it is memory that constitutes manhood. Because if you don't have memory, you don't know what's happened yesterday or even 1 minute back. You need memory for that. If it is not there, you are floating. Every day you are a new person and the personality is not operating in a continuous manner. But he says that's why he is going to now start with looking at memory. I am reading the para that we have to read today. Nevertheless, it is as well to begin with this phenomenon of memory when we consider the nature of the ignorance in which we dwell. All human beings in the beginning dwell in ignorance. For it may give the key to certain important aspects of our conscious existence. We see that, now note carefully how interestingly, not our existence, our conscious existence. Memory starts coming in when you become conscious. If there is no consciousness, question of memory doesn't even arise. So when we consider the nature of the ignorance in which we dwell, for it may give the key to certain important aspects of our conscious existence. we see that there are two applications which the mind makes of its faculty or process of memory. Memory of self, memory of experience. So, memory of oneself. I was angry yesterday, I was very happy day before yesterday. Your knowledge of yourself. Okay, so memory of self. Memory of experience, memory of events in the physical world. So, memory of yourself inwardly, psychologically, and materially in the outside world. These are the two types of memory that you have. We see that there are two applications which the mind makes of its faculty or process of memory. Memory of self, memory of experience. First, radically, it applies memory to the fact of our conscious being and relates that to time. It says, I am now, I was in the past, I shall therefore be in the future. It is the same I in all the three ever unstable divisions of time. They are all unstable. Time doesn't stop for anybody. It just goes on, goes on, goes on. Thus, it tries to render to itself, in the terms of time, an account of that which it feels to be the fact, but cannot know or prove to be true. The eternity of the conscious being. So, the eternity of the conscious being, it can imagine. I have always existed in the past, I am likely to exist in the future, but it can't prove. You can't prove that you were existing yesterday. No. That's what he's saying, okay? No proof. Eternity of the conscious being. Which is the conscious being and eternity? Yourself. Or your psychic being. Not the body-mind life. By memory, mind can only know of itself in the past. By direct self-awareness, only in the moment of the present. And it is only an extension of an inference from this self-awareness and from the memory which tells us that for some time awareness has been continuously existing, that mind can conceive of itself in the future. So, let's look at this sentence carefully. By memory, mind can only know of itself in the past. But when it comes to the present, direct self-awareness only in the moment of the present. When you go out of your body-mind life and go to the self, you are only in the present because time stops there. You have gone there and only the present is there. That's why Eckhart Tolle, I think.
Tolle, yeah.
How do you pronounce it? Tolle or Toll? Tolle. So, he wrote a book, The Power of Now, the power of the present. So when you go there, there is no time. So you are aware of yourself without time. That's what he's saying. Only in the moment of the present. And it is only by expression of an inference from this self-awareness and from the memory which tells us that for some time awareness has been continuously existent, that mind can conceive of itself in the future. Because you know that you were in the past and you know you are present also, it is most likely that I will be there also in the future. The extent of the past and the future, it cannot fix. How long have I existed in the past? How long will I exist in future? No knowledge and you can't fix it. Okay? It can only carry back the past to the limit of its memory and infer from the incidents of others and the facts of life.
Evidence of others.
1 second. And it is only by extension of an inference from the self-awareness and from memory which tells us that for some time awareness has been continuously existent, that mind can conceive of itself in the future. The extent of the past and the future it cannot fix. It can only carry back the past to the limit of its memory and infer from the evidence of others and the facts of life it observes around it that a conscious being already was in times which it can no longer remember. In other words, I like to ask the children when they read this, how far does your memory go? Do you remember what you were when you were 1 year old, when you were 2 years old? So some say, after 4 I remember, after 6 I remember, some say I can remember even when I was 3 incidents. So after that, it depends on each one's memory, how far in the past it can go. Okay, so it can no longer remember. It knows that it existed in an infant, unreasoning state of the mind to which memory has lost its link. So, when you are an infant, memory starts at a particular time, but before that, the link is gone. Okay, you don't remember what you were when you were born. Okay, it knows that it existed in an infant, unreasoning state of the mind to which memory has lost its link. Whether it existed before physical birth, the mortal mind, owing to the gap of memory, cannot determine. You can't say you existed before you were born.
But
Maybe.
Some can say they've.
Pardon?
Some remember past lives.
When you, not in your normal consciousness, only when you go out and you are in touch with the higher levels of consciousness, that you can get hints. But the real solid evidence that yes, I existed is only in the self, not in the mind. Okay? Of the future, it knows nothing at all. Of its existing in the next moment, it can only have a moral certainty, which some happening of that moment can prove to be an error, because what it saw was no more than a dominant probability. You don't know if you are going to exist the next moment. Okay, but you feel there is a moral certainty. It's all right, I'm sitting in this chair, nothing can happen to me, I will exist.
And then
Now it is 5:30, I will exist at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock. I will be there. In fact, I'm planning things for tomorrow. Which means I'm going to exist. You plan sometimes for even 2 years, 3 years. Okay. So, but it can prove to be an error. Okay. You don't know for sure, because what it saw was no more than a dominant probability. Much less can it know whether or no physical dissolution is the end of the conscious being. You don't even know that. You can know all these things only when you go to the higher level of consciousness. Okay, so yet it has this sense of a persistent continuity which easily extends itself into a conviction of eternity. Same as saying easily extends itself into a conviction of eternity, but many people in the world think that they have only one life, and they don't think of themselves as they are going to live eternally. One life they will have. Or even after the death of the body, you will exist. Maybe in heaven or in hell, but you will exist. So, it can easily extend itself into a conviction of eternity. Not in the physical body necessarily, but soul. This conviction may be either the reflection in the mind of an endless past which it has forgotten, but which something in it retains the formless impression, or it may be the shadow of a self-knowledge which comes to the mind from a higher or a deeper plane of our being, where we are really aware of our eternal self-existence. So let's look at this sentence carefully. This conviction, which conviction? That I have existed and I will always exist. Okay, this conviction of eternity may be either. Now Srimdu is examining consciousness. Yes. So he is examining all the possibilities to see. Okay, that's why he's using the may be either. It may be. It could be. I don't know, I am examining. Okay. This conviction may be either. Several possibilities he has given. The first possibility, the reflection in the mind of an endless past which it has forgotten, but of which something in it retains the formless impression. I just mentioned something very interesting here. Mother says that she has the memory of almost the beginning of time. She says that in
And all her lives.
Huh?
And all her lives.
Lives are afterwards. She is going to the origin of creation.
Yes.
So she says something can be there, okay? Formless impression, look at the word. An impression is there that I was there, but it is formless. No clear details, okay? Or it may be the shadow of a self-knowledge which comes to the mind from a higher or a deeper plane of our being, where we are really aware of our eternal self-existence. So, if you go to the self, that is a higher plane, then you know that yes, you existed in the past and you will exist in the future. Or you go deeper. So, either you touch the psychic or you touch the self. The psychic is deeper and the self is higher. Higher or deeper being aware. Even when you go into your intraconscient, not necessarily the psychic being, some intimations may come to you, of the future even. There's a whole chapter where he examines what is dream, how you go into the intraconscient, the future is revealed to you, guidance is given, all this is there. So that's why he's leaving it as deeper plane of our being, where we are really aware. The other are only possibilities, okay, of our eternal self-existence. Or conceivably, or it could be my idea that I always existed, it might be a hallucination. He is going on examining all the possibilities, okay, so, or it might be a hallucination. Just as we cannot sense or realize in our foreseeing consciousness the fact of death and can only live in the feeling of continued existence, cessation being to us an intellectual conception we can hold with certainty, even imagine with vividness, but never actually realize because we live only in the present. Yet death, cessation or interruption, at least of our actual mode of being, is a fact, and the sense or prevision of continued existence in the future in the physical body becomes beyond a point we cannot now fix a hallucination, a false extension, or a misapplication of our present mental impression of conscious being. So, conceivably, it might be with this mental idea or impression of conscious eternity. It could be a hallucination, that's what he's saying. Okay? But it's very interesting what he's saying. We'll have a look at that sentence carefully again. Can we imagine what will happen to me after death? So he's saying we can't. That also we don't know. We don't know when there will be a death or even what death will be. No idea at all. And he is using three words: death, cessation or interruption. What does he mean by interruption? The interruption of a physical existence between life and life. He uses the word interruption in that sense. My present life is interrupted and I go on to my next life. Because in that interruption, I am not in the physical world, I am in the subtle worlds. And then the psychic being takes place again. So he is including all, okay? Death, cessation or interruption, at least of our actual mode of being, is a fact, and the sense or prevision of continued existence in the future in a physical body becomes beyond a point we cannot now fix a hallucination, a false extension or a misapplication of our present mental impression of conscious being. So many possibilities are there because you are in ignorance. You don't know the future, you don't know what will happen to you. So, conceivably, it might be with this mental idea or impression of conscious eternity. It could be that man is fooling himself. So, imagining and thinking of all the possibilities. He's not saying it is like that. Or it might be again, see, or again, another possibility. Or it might be a false transference to ourselves of the perception of a real eternity, conscient or inconscient, other than ourselves. The eternity of the universe or of something which exceeds the universe. So he's saying, normal man can think that the universe is going to exist forever. Where has it started? You don't know. Science is making all sorts of guesses. 14 billion years. That's what they say. But that's the Big Bang theory. Yeah. But it could all be something, it's a false transference to ourselves. If the world exists, then I also exist. A false transference to ourselves of the perception of a real eternity, conscient or inconscient. Why? Because at one time the world was unconscient. There was no life. Or after life has come, it is conscient. So conscient or inconscient, other than ourselves. Even if I don't exist, the world has existed. The eternity of the universe or of something which exceeds the universe. Even if the universe did not exist, something must have been there earlier.
When these things come down through poetry and you write them down, they are existent at the moment or just the mind.
It has come into your mind, but whether that thing is real or unreal, you don't know. You can't prove that it is real.
Can't prove it, but I think you could know it.
It's a false transference, he's saying. Okay? I mean, these are possibilities. He is not saying it is like that. He is examining consciousness. So when he is examining consciousness, he is looking into every nook and corner. Could it be this? Could it be this? Could it be this? Then finally he will eliminate other things and he will say, most likely it is like this. That's how he proceeds always. Okay, so that's why or, looking at all the possibilities. So, or of something which exceeds the universe. The mind, seizing this fact of eternity, may falsely transfer it to our own conscious being, which may be nothing more than a transient phenomenon of that only true eternal. So this also is a possibility. Maybe you really don't exist. In fact, that's what the Mayavadan says. Yes. Okay, so I go to the next para.
Yes.
These questions, our surface mind by itself has no means of solving. There you are.
Surface mind.
Yeah. Our surface mind is a normal mind that we have. By itself has no means of solving. It can only speculate upon them endlessly and arrive at more or less well-reasoned opinions. Opinions, not facts. The belief in our immortality is only a faith. A belief in our mortality is only a faith. Whether I exist or not, I don't know at all. I know only that I exist now. Even this.
But I believe it.
Yeah, it could be a hallucination. It could be anything. Okay. The belief in our immortality is only a faith. The belief in our mortality is only a faith. It is impossible for the materialist to prove that our consciousness ends with the death of the body. For he may indeed show that there is as yet no convincing proof that anything in us consciously survives. But equally, there is and there can be in the nature of things no proof that our conscious self does not outlast the physical dissolution. Now, 100 years after Sri Aurobindo wrote this, now there is proof. Because any number of people have had near-death experience and the body is dead, but you go into a region where those worlds are more concrete and more real than your physical world. Any number of cases are there. The internet is full of all these cases. So proof is there now. But that also is a very concrete thing that you experience. Okay, so Now, we're saying something interesting. Survival of the body by the human personality may hereafter be proved. He is already saying that it could be proved, it will be proved. Okay? May be proved, and now we know that it has been proved. Okay, so survival of the body. Now, this was very strange construction, and I got puzzled about it. Okay? So, survival of the body. Survival beyond, not survival of the body, but beyond the body. Okay? I can say, I am free of cancer. Okay? So, that word off is used in that way. If you look at the dictionary, you will see that off has got many meanings. Okay? So, survival of the body, survival after the body. You can take it in that sense. Otherwise, it makes no sense. Body does not survive. Survival of the body by the human personality may hereafter be proved even to the satisfaction of the skeptic. So, that has happened now. Okay.
Yes.
But even then, what will be established will only be a greater continuity, not the eternity of the conscious being. You can't prove that you have always existed. Yes, I was there in the past life. I have had the experience. I know that what has happened. But have I always been there? You don't know. What will be established will only be a greater continuity and not the eternity of the conscious being. In fact, if we look at the mind's concept of this eternity, we see that it comes only to a continuous succession of moments of being in an eternal time. Okay. So, what is eternity? Succession of moments eternally. Therefore, it is time that is eternal and not the continuously momentary conscious being. So, time is there always, but not the momentary conscious being. Which is the momentary conscious being? Our normal existence. Because momentary. The self is not momentary, it is eternal. So, momentary, when he says conscious being, our normal existence. Therefore, it is time that is eternal and not the continuously momentary conscious being. In fact, the momentary conscious being undergoes death. It doesn't exist after some time. You put on a new personality. But on the other hand, there is nothing in mind evidence to show that eternal time really exists or that time itself is anything more than the conscious being's way of looking at some uninterrupted continuity. Or it may be eternity of existence as an indivisible flow which it conceptually measures by the successions and simultaneities of the experiences through which alone that existence is represented to it. So what's he saying? Have a look. But on the other hand, there is nothing in mind evidence to show that eternal time really exists, or that time itself is anything more than the conscious being's way of looking at some uninterrupted continuity. Uninterrupted continuity is one life, but an interrupted continuity is several lives. Because each time death comes, there is an interruption. He uses the word interruption in this sense. Okay? So, if there is an eternal existence, which is a conscious being, it must be beyond time which it contains, timeless as we say. It must be the eternal of the Vedanta, who, we may then conjecture, uses time only as a conceptual perspective for his view of his self-manifestation. So, now he is saying, if there is an eternal existence, which is a conscious being, it must be beyond time. Because in time, you are ignorant and you can't fix anything, you don't know. So, if there is something like that which you want to prove, it is beyond time. And that's a self. Remember that the self is, when you are there, you are in a timeless, spaceless condition. Okay? So everything is static there. There is no flow of time. It must be beyond time, which it contains. Time is contained in that. Timeless, as we say. It must be the eternal of the Vedanta, who we may there then conjecture. There also is still conjecture. We don't know. Okay?
Yes.
Uses time only as a conceptual perspective for his view of his self-manifestation. What Sridhar is saying is, when the eternal Satchidananda wants to manifest himself, he is looking at himself in time and space. He can look at himself outside time and space also, but he is looking in time and space. He contains time within himself, which it contains. Conceptual for his view of his self-manifestation. H cap.
Yes.
So, the Vedantic, the eternal of the Vedanta is, if you want to be very loose with your language, say God. Okay? God is looking at himself. He produces time and he is looking at himself in the manifestation. Because when in the higher planes of consciousness, self upwards, there is no time. So you are not really looking at yourself, you are self-absorbed. When you create something, then you can look at what you have created.
Even in the higher mind?
Higher mind is the lowest of the spiritual planes.
Yeah, but it's the same.
Yeah. There you can look at yourself. In fact, by looking at yourself only you go to the self. If there is an eternal existence which is a conscious being, it must be beyond time, which it contains. Timeless, as we say. It must be the eternal Vedanta who, we may then conjecture, uses time only as a conceptual perspective for his view of his self-manifestation. Self-manifestation in the physical world. He can look at himself outside manifestation. That is what is called Chit Ghana. He looking only at himself, not creating anything in the physical world. But manifestation, he is looking at what he has created. Okay? But the timeless self-knowledge of this eternal is beyond mind, higher mind upwards. Okay? It is a supramental knowledge, superconscious to us, and only to be acquired by the stilling or transcending of the temporal activity of our conscious mind, by an entry into silence or a passage through silence into the consciousness of eternity. So, you can go up by making your mind silent, stilling. So, when you still your mind, you go to the higher mind. But you can go even beyond that. Or transcending of the temporal activity, that's a transcendent consciousness. Okay, so all the something of your eternity you come to know only when you go above the mind. That's what basically what he's saying. So, very small paras each one. So, I'll summarize what he said just now. But I am reading the summary of what he said in this para. Okay. What, after all, is the sense of eternal existence in the human mind? When we look closely, we find that the mortal mind conceives of an eternal time span consisting of continuously connected events. Therefore, it is really time that is eternal and not the momentary consciousness awareness of man. But there is nothing in the mind of man to show that this eternal really exists. Or is it rather the witness look of the conscious being experiencing the continuity of events? So, there must be a conscious being which is eternal and beyond time. This is the Vedantic eternal being looking at its own manifestation in time and space. This eternal timeless being is the supermind, beyond man's mind. It can be experienced by man only by silencing the mind and realizing the self, the Brahman. So long as you are in ordinary mind, absolute ignorance. You don't know the past, you don't know the future, you don't know anything. But by going up, you can experience the timelessness, the eternity of your own existence. I read the next para. From all this, the one great fact emerges that the very nature of our mind is ignorance. Very clear. It could be this, it could be this, it could be this, it could be this, I don't know. Okay? So it is, ignorance is very much there in our mind. Not an absolute nescience. Okay? It's not absolutely a total ignorance, but a limited and conditioned knowledge of being. Limited by a realization of its present, a memory of its past, an inference of its future. Okay, so inference only. Inference of its future, conditioned therefore by a temporal and successive view of itself and its experiences. There are two words, one should not get mixed up, temporal and temporary. Temporally belonging to time, of time, temporal. Its nature is of time. But temporary is something that lasts for a short time, transient. That is temporary. He has used the word temporal here. If real existence is a temporal eternity, then the mind has not the knowledge of real being. So, if real existence is a temporal eternity, then the mind has not the knowledge of real being. For even its own past it loses in the vague of oblivion, except for the little that memory holds. Okay? We remember, I don't remember so many things, even that have happened. So, whatever the memory holds, you know a little bit, but eternity, you don't know. It loses in the vague of oblivion. Look at he has used the word vague as a noun here. Okay, the vague of oblivion. So maybe the word vague also can be used as an adjective and a noun. The vague of oblivion. Confusion, the vagueness of oblivion, except for the little that memory holds. It has no possession of its future, which is withheld from it in a great blank of ignorance. It has only a knowledge of its present, changing from moment to moment in a helpless succession of names, forms, happenings, the march or flux of a cosmic kinesis, which is too vast for its control or its comprehension. Okay, so you are ignorant of the past and the future, everything. The march or a flux of cosmic kinesis. In the cosmos, there is constant movement. In the higher planes of consciousness, no movement at all. It is static. This is movement all the time. On the other hand, if real existence is a time-transcending eternity, the mind is still more ignorant of it. I don't know what's beyond time, okay, unless I go there. Okay. It can, our mind is still more ignorant of it, for it only knows the little of it that it can itself seize from moment to moment by fragmentary experience of its surface self-manifestation in time and space.
Surface self-manifestation.
Pardon?
Surface self-manifestation.
Yeah. The divine has manifested himself here. Everything in the physical world is a manifestation of the divine. In time and space. The manifestation always takes place only in time and space. The manifestation is clear. He is manifesting himself. It's a representation. It's an image. Like a photograph. A photograph of you is That's manifest. The whole universe is a manifestation of the divine. It's a image of the divine.
My question was about self-manifestation.
Yes. So what's the question?
How does that relate?
Self is, I am myself, I am extending myself into the physical world in time and space. I am manifesting myself in time and space. I have a thought in my mind, I am not manifesting it, I am keeping it in my mind. But the moment I speak it out, I am manifesting what is in my mind. Manifestation is to give form to. You are giving it a form. That form can be physical, it can be subtle, it can be spiritual. So, if then mind is all, or if the apparent mind in us is the index of the nature of our being, we can never be anything more than an ignorance, fleeting through time and catching at knowledge in a most scanty and fragmentary fashion. But if there is a power of self-knowledge beyond mind, which is timeless in essence and can look on time, perhaps with a simultaneous all-relating view of past, present and future, but in any case as a circumstance of its own timeless being, then we have two powers of consciousness, knowledge and ignorance. The Vedantic Vidya and Avidya. These two must be then either different and unconnected powers, separately born, as well as diverse in their action, separately self-existent in an eternal dualism, or else, if there is a connection between them, it must be this, that consciousness as knowledge knows its timeless self and sees time within itself, while consciousness as ignorance is a partial and superficial action of the same knowledge which sees rather itself in time, veiling itself in its own conception of temporal being, and can only, by the removal of the veil, return to eternal self-knowledge. We'll look at this carefully because there are many who do say that the two are unconnected. Knowledge and ignorance, both are real and both are unconnected. That's a Buddhistic view, the Mayavadic view. That is real, this is unreal, and the two are unconnected. Now he is saying, we have looked at mind and we have seen its ignorance. So now, is this ignorance permanent, or is it that there is something else which you can go to? Is there only one world or are there other worlds also? That's what he is describing. If then mind is all, or if the apparent mind in us is the index of the nature of our being, now, apparent mind in us is the index of the nature of our being. That means this is the only thing that exists, our apparent mind. We can never be anything more than an ignorance, fleeting through time and catching at knowledge in a most scanty and fragmentary fashion. What is the knowledge that we are catching? Knowledge of the physical world, which is transient. All scientific knowledge is catching at knowledge in a most scanty and fragmentary fashion. If you tell that to a scientist, he'll be angry. What? I'm discovering so many things. But the physical facts he's discovering is only one tiny bit of real knowledge. But now he's saying, it's possible that only our mind ignorance exists. But could it be that there is another plane of consciousness which is not ignorance? But if there is a power of self-knowledge beyond mind, which is timeless in essence and can look on time, perhaps with a simultaneous all-relating view of past, present, future. Here also he is saying perhaps. Actually, this does exist. When you go to the self, you look at past, present and future, Trikala Drishti. The view of past, present and future at one time. You see it like a canvas picture. but in any case as a circumstance of our own timeless being. Then we have two powers of consciousness. There is knowledge and there is ignorance. The Vedantic Vidya and Avidya. These two must be then either different and unconnected powers, separately born, as well as diverse in their action, separately self-existent in an eternal dualism, or else, if there is a connection between them, it must be this, that consciousness as knowledge knows its timeless self and sees time within itself, while consciousness as ignorance is a partial and superficial action of the same knowledge which sees rather itself in time, veiling itself in its own conception of temporal being, and can only by the removal of the veil return to eternal self-knowledge. So again he is examining possibilities. Is there only ignorance? Then we can never know the reality. But is there something else which is there which is not ignorance? Is there a knowledge? And if it is there, are they connected or unconnected? So Sridhar is giving perhaps, but in his view, the knowledge and the ignorance are very much connected. Okay? And you can graduate from ignorance to knowledge. So this is putting as a possibility.
Thank you, Ranga. Namaste all. And we'll see you next week, page 524.